Is Shedeur Sanders going to be a franchise quarterback? Can Abdul Carter be the first edge rusher drafted? And is Emeka Egbuka the next great NFL wide receiver from Ohio State? We're breaking it all down for you today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase.
Joe, happy thick pick.
Colin Saunders, baby. Let's go.
Did you hear the Harlan call of it? The Kevin Harlan call?
It's got to be so good, I'm sure.
Yes. So he's on Westwood One radio for Monday Night Football, and they do the interception, and he runs it back, and he's on with Ross Tucker, and Ross does a great job, too. I've met Ross a couple of times. He's a really nice guy, but just hearing Kevin, and, like, he got more excited after the play was over. You know how Kevin, he's got, like, the booming.
Yeah, he does every Dolphins game, so you hear him a lot, right?
And after the play was over was when he first termed it a thick pick. And Ross is like belly laughing in the background. He goes, it was a thick pick. and Kevin like kept going, but like the play was over for like 30 seconds. And Kevin was just like mind blown. It was amazing. So if you haven't caught the Kevin Harlan radio call of Colin Saunders' interception on the goal line from last night with the Chiefs game, catch it because it's worth it.
When I get done recording this podcast with you, I know what I'm doing. I got to listen to that.
I'm going to go find it.
Thank you. So have it fresh and ready for me.
Yep.
Speaking of fresh and ready, we're not talking about Krispy Kreme donuts. We're talking about Shedeur Sanders, the Colorado quarterback. We're getting into prospects today. We're doing more draft talk tomorrow. I know we normally do our prospects on Wednesday. This week is on Tuesday because tomorrow we got a big board to talk about Kyle Crabbs' top 100. We're going to get into that tomorrow.
100 players.
Yeah, we'll talk about every single one of them.
No,
including,
we will not.
These three are surely on there. Shedeur Sanders, quarterback, Colorado, 6'2", 215 pounds. Began his career at Jackson State, went to Colorado, followed Deion, his father, who was the head coach at both places. Going to be a 4-year starter. Is probably going to have 2,000 passing attempts for his career entering the NFL. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of different opinions on him. That's the floor. That's the setting the floor, if you will, Kyle Crabbs.
Sure.
Well, go ahead, man. What you got to say about Shedeur Sanders?
Have you ever heard that Bruce Lee quote about water and cup? Be like water. You put the water into the cup. It's shaped like the cup. If you put it in a bowl, it's shaped like a bowl, whatever. It can be strong,
I've never heard this.
Powerful.
Profound. That's very profound.
It's a very profound quote about the power of water because it's fluid. And I think if I were to think of not the noun fluid, the verb fluid.
Just goes in whatever
I'm
container
sure
you put it in.
That
It
wasn't
takes,
right either, but
it
we're not
takes
English
the
guys,
shape.
we're not math guys. We're crushing it.
Hey,
here.
this is a step down from the plate tectonics.
Nailed it. Should people who want to know about Shedeur just like, dude, shut up and just tell us about a football player. He's very fluid is the thing that stands out to me. And I don't know that I would use the word dynamic to describe Shedeur Sanders, but fluid is how I would describe his style of play. And that's within the pocket, extending plays, his throwing motion. I think it's all very fluid and smooth. And he's playing in an environment in Colorado where, let's be honest, the offensive line is not what you would like it to be. And I think that if you're looking for reasons for optimism for Shedeur Sanders, it's the fact that he is in 2 seasons or a season and a half in Colorado. He's completing 70% of his passes while having to deal with a ton of pressure, a ton of duress, a ton of having to extend plays and create within the pocket. He's one of those quarterbacks that I think he thinks he's a little more athletic than he is. And sometimes that gets him in trouble with those extended plays. But that's the thing that stands out to me the most about Shedeur is he's found a way to be very proficient and fluid while having to deal with a lot of unideal circumstances with his supporting cast around him.
I think two of my prevailing thoughts are very much in line with what you were saying. I don't think you can get too far into the tape without realizing how many protection issues Colorado has. And some of it's the offensive line just getting beat up. They don't handle pressure well in terms of their plan for dealing with pressure. And so Shedeur faces a ton of pressure, which is problematic. And I know that you look at some quarterbacks and you're aware of how much of that is the responsibility of the quarterback, holding the ball or being kind of that matador style of player and inviting some chaos. I didn't really get that from Shedeur. I felt like his protection schemes just got beat up over and over and over again. The other thing, and this isn't really about Shedeur, but it does speak to the environment that he's in Colorado, is my God, did they play some wide formations? I mean, there are times where he's on one hash, and then they're throwing perimeter screens to the opposite to the field outside. It's like, dude, that's a 40-yard throw.
Yeah,
40-yard throw to do a perimeter screen. It's like, man, and some of those just little slat flat combos, and it's like, man, these throws are way far for them being so short. It was kind of interesting. I'm sure he's going to be excited in the NFL to get into some tighter formations and some bigger people and not have to throw 40 yards to complete a 2-yard pass.
Usually it's the other way around, right? Where like the hashes become a big deal for the NFL because the hashes get narrower, but for Shedeur, they put a lot on him for more routine types of plays.
I think within that, though, Kyle, I think he does win from the pocket with pretty good consistency. I do think he works progressions. I think he's a pretty accurate quarterback. I don't think he has big-time arm talent. I think he has good arm talent. I compare it to like Jaden Daniels. It's not Caleb Williams in terms of arm talent. And I do think he does have that Spencer Rattler syndrome where it's like, man, you're not the athlete you think you are. You're slippery. You can make some plays when there's some green grass. But in terms of some of the extended plays, it's like, dude, I don't see the quick twitch explosiveness that maybe he thinks he has. But at the same time, like there is creativity in how he makes plays, all levels of the field, can layer it in there.
He's got pretty good vision.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Maybe kind of learning when to give up on a play would be helpful. But I'm surprised for as creative as he can be and how willing he is to throw the ball down the field. Like he doesn't really put it into harm's way a ton, which I think is a pretty good compliment. So I hate to get to this point, but and maybe it's an oversimplification, and I've watched a lot of quarterbacks over the years, and I've been right and wrong about a lot of them. With Shedeur Sanders, I think he clears the line of, do I think this guy gives you a chance to have a franchise quarterback? Yeah, I think he's above the line. So I would understand an investment in him. I certainly not perfect. I don't think he's like a guy that in any year you think this is a top 5 quarterback and should be that type of conversation with him being in the number one player in the draft. I think he crosses the line, and I think there's plenty to be intrigued with about him in the NFL.
So I want to kind of revisit the pressure element of Shedeur. I have, courtesy of True Media, I have some names, and then I'm going to tell you what the filter is that I put them on, and then ask you some questions. Okay. Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, Cade Klubnik, Brady Cook, Cam Ward, Drew Aller, Jackson Dart, Dylan Gabriel, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Riley Leonard, Curtis Rourke, and Garrett Nussmeier. It's a lot of names, right? Those are most of the prominent quarterbacks eligible for the 2025 NFL draft. Most of them, not all of them. The filters is third down attempts under pressure. Shedeur Sanders, 90 dropbacks since the start of the 2023 season. So a season and a half. The next highest number is 74 out of all of those names. And in spite of that, how many or what, where do you think he ranks on that list of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 quarterbacks. Where do you think he ranks in completion percentage?
So third down under pressure completion percentage?
Yes.
I mean, I know what his normal numbers are under pressure. I don't have it parsed out for third and longs. I would guess he's probably hovering between 55 to 65%. I would guess. I would guess that's pretty high. Top 3 for sure.
He's 5th on this list with 45% completion on 62 attempts. He's 28 of 62 since the start of 2023. The only players that are in front of him, Dylan Gabriel, 45.5%. Cam Ward at 46.3%. Curtis Rourke, now at Indiana, formerly of Ohio, at 52%, but that's on 23 attempts. And Garrett Nussmeier at 53.8%, and that's on 13 attempts because he only started this year. So he is performing above average, and that's in contrast to Drew Allers at 32%, Jackson Darts at 31%, Pete Klubnik's at 35%, Carson Beck's at 37%, Jalen Milrose at 42%. So he's outperforming despite the biggest body of work. His ability to complete passes, his passer rating. He's not even the highest name on this list in taking sacks. That's Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe's taking 27 sacks on 74 dropbacks under pressure.
Third long under pressure?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot.
And that's when we get to the Jalen Milroe conversation. Well, Shedeur Sanders, despite taking 90 dropbacks, is sacked
not as athletic.
Times.
He's not as athletic.
Nowhere near as athletic.
Right.
So it's a really interesting dynamic about like the ceiling and the floor and all that kind of stuff. But that is in a nutshell. I thought that really encapsulated like the extra layers of evaluating Shedeur that you don't necessarily have to deal with when you're evaluating some of the other quarterbacks in this class.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think when he gets better structure around him, which I know feels a little bit weird to say, I think there's other levels to his game that we will see unlocked.
Pat Shurmur, huh?
Well, I don't, man.
The offensive line performance is regardless of what the offensive system is. Your offensive line play has been super underwhelming,
and the formational width hurts you at like simultaneously having those protection issues while everything is a million miles away from you makes it difficult. I just think it's hard it's harder than it has to be when it's supposed to be simple, right? Like it's a weird combination. Okay, Abdul Carter, edge rusher, Penn State. We're talking about him next. Be sure to stick with us. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and a brand new documentary-style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. So go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register, hillsdale.edu/lockedon.
How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Never.
But
Literally
that
never.
was a thing, right?
Yeah, and I saw that going on. I'm like,
never.
Not once, ever. No.
I don't know. Is 300 on TV?
What do you have an answer for that? Is this crossing your mind?
And I know Spartans, and just to be very abundantly clear, I know Spartans and the Roman Empire is not exactly the same thing, but it's just like that time era. I don't think about it ever.
Yeah, never.
Abdul Carter is transitioning from off-ball linebacker to playing on the edge this season, and it makes for a interesting evaluation. He is a prototype player from a stature perspective to play on the edge. He's a heavy hitter, like abnormally big off the ball kind of guy. had a lot of splash plays pressuring from depth at Penn State prior to this past season. But the game against Illinois felt like it was the game in which everything kind of snapped into place for him playing on the edge. He had 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. I think he had 8 total pressures in that game against Illinois in what was a good matchup. So you have to evaluate this player through the lens of what he's capable of being, what he is now, in contrast to the positionless player debate that probably is going to get invoked in him just because of where he's played off the ball and on the edge.
So I'll start by saying this. You have been intentional about making me wait to watch Abdul Carter. I know he's appeared pretty high on your rankings, and I understand why, because there is this transition. And the first game I watched was West Virginia. And I'm like, buddy,
this is not it.
This is not a player that I need to be watching as a highly regarded prospect. And, they played him as a static player as the right defensive end. And, it just wasn't a good showcase of what he can do. And then I did watch the Illinois game. And what I really appreciated about the Illinois game is that this was the first time, at least in my exposures to him, where they were willing to move him around. They played him up in the A gaps and used him as more of a chess piece, a lot more of what you see Dallas do with Micah Parsons. And I don't want to invoke that name irresponsibly, but in terms of the role, and of course they wear 11 at Penn State, like I get all the parallels there. I think there's a lot to be intrigued with. Obviously he's explosive with a crazy good first step. There's some flexibility to him. I think he's got some pretty good contact balance where when he's trying to shave that edge with his outside rush, it's good. And I think a lot of his best moments from what I was able to see came from when he's kind of like a quasi spy type player where it's like, hey, attack the A gap, but then also like peel off and be able to kind of cut off anywhere that the quarterback where he wants to go. And I thought he was very successful with that. And so I see the upside. What you can't do is grade him through the criteria of, hey, I expect an edge rusher to play the run this type of way. I expect him to have this repertoire of pass rush moves because I think he's still expanding it. And I even saw from the West Virginia game to the Illinois game, I saw a guy that tried to win with speed and burst around the bed continuously to, okay, we do have a swim move. Okay, we do have kind of that set up that spin move as well, which was effective for him a couple of times. So he's building out the repertoire. He's got a lot of skill. And obviously he runs 4.48 in the 40. He hit 22.4 miles per hour on the gun, 4.35 short shuttle. There's physical upside here. It's just a matter of like how polished can he become as an edge player? And if not, do you feel good about the different ways that you can deploy him to get production?
It's interesting because he's kind of has some overlap while having a different starting place to what Chop Robinson did some at Penn State last year, where like he would be the guy that they would walk up in gaps and line up inside. And then he obviously has this dynamic first step explosiveness and tries to win with speed off the edge and can create a lot of chaos. So different foundational starting places where Chop is a defensive end and Abdul is a stack backer at his core, or at least he was to start his career at Penn State before they both kind of became these chess pieces that Penn State finds ways to weaponize and move around. But I'm buying in on the tools, but I do look at Abdul Carter and say this is probably a guy that's not going to be for everybody in the stratosphere of where he's being talked about and where he will garner consideration because of just how elite the athletic skill set is. Like you have to be in one of two places as an organization to make this your marquee like face of your draft class. You've either got to be a team that has all the time in the world because you're new and you're developing, or you need to be a team that has a very oddly, like uniquely specific vision for how you're going to use him and get the best out of him. I don't trust everybody to do that.
I totally agree with that. There's certain players who I think like I could see how the arc would resemble, whether that's Hassan Reddick, but maybe like Bryce Huff, like actually when Bryce Huff was good, like
Bryce Huff with the Jets or Bryce
Huff with the Jets.
Eagles who Vic doesn't play.
Yeah, that version, the Jets version.
Jets version, okay.
So yeah, it's like Yeah, man, he's tricky. He's tricky. And like, and my scouting is definitely biased towards like sure things and like, hey, I can really count on everything this player is. And, I don't think he checks all those boxes. At the same time, I definitely understand like the appeal here. It's just like, it's not a very complete profile.
Do you think he's more? Where does he play his majority of snaps?
Long and late downs, rushing the passer.
Okay.
I know that was very not specific and it was very intentional.
Okay.
But
Well,
I think that rushing the passer is so much more than just hitting a cool pass rush move and making a sack. Like more times than not, that's not how sacks happen in the NFL, right? It's about the pressure and how it works together to kind of keep the quarterback in a spot, and then you kind of get you get a crease and you're able to kind of take it. This guy feels awesome for that type of stuff. You see this all the time.
I would agree.
So, like, are you willing to do that with him? And then, like, situationally, like, hey, just go be a better athlete off the edge and win? Like, yes, I can get production out of that.
So, assuming all the coaching staff stay the same, we know that's not how this works. Like, don't put him in Cleveland, right?
No.
Don't put him with Jim Schwartz to go be the end opposite Myles Garrett and a best player available type selection. Like, don't do that.
Flores?
Yeah. Now, are they going to be in a position to draft him? No. They also have Dallas Turner, who kind of had some of that same stuff.
Right.
As far as like authentic, just like, oh, we're going to put you on an island, go win as a pass rusher versus like being a part of a collaborative front with a collective pass rush plan.
Kind of what you see from Baltimore.
Okay.
Like, are you willing to mug up the line of scrimmage? Are you willing to put a bunch of bodies up there? And
we don't want to put him in Cincinnati. Like, I'm trying to think of teams that are like tracking towards the top of the draft. All right, hold on. Hold on.
None of that.
Why don't we do the break and then we'll come back and do the thing and then we'll get into the exact opposite player and a player that you know exactly what he is in Emeka Egbuka.
Coming up next. Stick with us. Game Time, folks. Purchasing tickets can be stressful, but it doesn't have to be, and it isn't if you have Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I love the app. It's easy to navigate. They give you flash deals. They give you a seat view. If you purchase tickets, they send them straight to your phone, so you don't have to dig through emails to find it. They give you all-in prices, and I love that they specialize in last-minute tickets. You don't always know if you're going to be able to get to an event, but you can make that decision right up until the day of the event and get a great deal over at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time.
New England.
Yeah, if you don't want to talk about need, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I'm
just specifically looking at like, hey, teams projected based off of current records to go like top 8 that would make sense for Abdul Carter.
Yeah.
New England, the Rams, the Titans with that Baltimore Ravens defensive coaching staff tree there with the seeds that they have. Miami, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona for sure.
So some good spots, but don't put them with a wide 9 system and just be like, okay, defensive end, go rush passer on the edge.
Not going to be the best way to get what he does out of him.
All right, Emeka Egbuka, who is the latest in the long line of Ohio State wide receivers with the Ohio State wide receiver factory that's currently going on. He is a senior this season, 6'1", 203 pounds is what he's listed at on the depth chart. Kind of always been the other guy, and I use that with air quotes, right? But he has overlap with Marvin Harrison Jr. and what early in his career did he overlapped? He was there with Garrett. Was he there with Garrett Wilson?
Probably. Well, he's been there 4 years, man. This is Garrett Wilson's 3rd season?
Right. So I mean, his Egbuka's best season was in 2022 when he posted 74 receptions for 1,151 yards and 10 touchdowns. He's on pace this year to about double up what he did last year from a production standpoint. So that's a nice bounce back for him in the midst of Ohio State being one of the most loaded teams in the country. That's kind of the path that we've taken to this point. He does have some special teams prowess as far as he returned kicks as a freshman. He returned some punts as a junior and sophomore.
Yeah, I think the production last year, you look at CJ Stroud not being there, but also he was coming off like a pretty big ankle injury that required surgery. So, and Marvin Harrison kind of being that guy last year. So it's good to kind of see him back in that prominent lead role and producing like he has. He's a likable player, man. I mean, I like the way he runs routes. I think he's got really good feel for space and how to manipulate coverage and make himself available, like super quarterback friendly, really good concentration at the catch point. I think that even when there's kind of traffic around him, he's very good at kind of making those catches and being really sure with his hands. Tough, competitive player, yards after catches there. I mean, in a lot of ways, he profiles extremely well as a slot type player. I think you have questions like, is he true? Is he going to win? Is he going to give you a vertical presence? Is he going to be an outside guy? I think you can have some questions about that, but I think a little bit about like Rashee Rice and the role that he has in Kansas City. And, I think Emeka would be so good in that type of a situation to be that featured type slot player in an offense. So yeah, I think you got to look at him through a certain lens. But I like him a lot. I'm not sure he's going to be like the primary option for an NFL passing game, but I think he can be a good number 2.
Right. I would be surprised if he hits some of his reported 40 time numbers. He's a dense wide receiver, right? He's 6'1", over 200 pounds is what he's listed at. He ran 4.42 coming out of high school. So that's a great time for a high school kid, right? And you could potentially get faster off of that. Maybe a little more in line with JSN, who was another one of those wide receivers that he overlapped with during his freshman season when they had JSN and Olave and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. in the same wide receiver room, and he was a part of that mix. But I think from recent wide receiver branches off of the Ohio State factory, I certainly think JSN's the one that I have the most parallels to as far as what Emeka Egbuka is as a player, where versus a Chris Olave where you're going to line him up outside and he's going to be the Z and he's going to lift the roof off the defense, even if he does run well, or a Marvin Harrison Jr. who you can isolate away from the numbers in your eligibles and have him win one-on-one and play through press and play through contact and trust him to win in all different kinds of ways. He is certainly somebody I think is most effective with space because of the short area agility, the route running ability, and he's got really good hands.
It's like straightforward to me.
Yeah. This is not a player that requires a lot of creativity to find the best pathway for him.
Correct.
You know where he'd be great? Cincinnati at the top of the second round.
Perfect.
Think about their wide receiver attrition, and now you potentially have more with T. Higgins and
Tyler Boyd stuff, man.
Tyler Boyd's gone. Right. It's exactly right. Like that kind of role as a slot player would be awesome for him.
Yeah. Think about what LA did with Robert Woods when they first got him. That stuff, man. That's what he is. I'd be stunned if he was anything more or anything less.
Right. And that's a long career in the NFL as a productive player in the NFL.
Heck yeah. Yeah.
So not too much imagination here required for Emeka Egbuka, who's also been, to be fair, on our radar since he put up 1,100 yards as a sophomore.
I remember Ohio State was in my region. I wrote this guy up 3 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, checking in. All right, cool.
Oh, that's the same guy. Okay. That is going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Joe mentioned it earlier. We have a top 100 coming out over on the 33rd team tomorrow. It's been a busy month of September watching college prospects. Look forward to dropping that and to chat through it with Joe and all of you tomorrow on the program. So we hope you come back and see us. And then to close out the week, we will be previewing week 6 in the NFL. and then taking all of your hot takes for Takes on Friday. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a good one. We are out of here.